those of you who attended. And it was well received, so we thought we would do it again and give you the chance to hear us talking about it live and ask us questions. And then at the end, you will have the opportunity to get the slide deck and watch a recording if you wish. Really good to meet you all. Some of you I recognise, but there's lots of new names as well, so this is great. I'd better introduce myself. My name's Claire Sieber, and I'm a GP by background. I'm based in West Sussex. I'm also a mediator, and I have some experience supporting practices and practice managers and partnerships with their issues through my mediation work, but also through working for LMCs down on the South Coast and for working for GPC England as well for a while. And I run the Well-Led practice with my colleagues who are on this lovely slide here. I will let them introduce themselves first. They're already waving. Oscar, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Claire. Hi, everybody. So as you can see on the screen, I'm Oscar Matthew, lawyer by background, but now spend time mediating and working with teams in healthcare generally. And yes, as I run this with Claire. Thank you very much. And on to Gary. Gary, would you like to say hello?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Gary Hughes. I was a practice manager for 13 years and on a federation board and primary care networks, and I've spent a couple of years now on the outside supporting primary care, working with organisations like the Well-Led, supporting practices and primary care networks. Ketan?
Hi, I'm Ketan Bhatt, a GP partner of 15 years, a mediator, and I also undertake a few leadership roles within our ICB, and obviously got an interest in leadership and mediation.
Thanks, Ketan, and very grateful for Ketan to join us on his clinical day. Thank you, Ketan. So let's give you a bit of a background about the Well-Led practice. You've probably noticed that 3 of us are mediators, so that gives you a little bit of a clue of how, I suppose, how we met and how we launched the Well-Led practice earlier on this year. Over to you, Oscar, to give the background.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. So what the Well-Led practice does is it's a platform that we provide to practices and to PCNs, which allow them to do some self-reflective work on their well-led situation. So the well-led review is a review that covers how the practice or PCN runs. So helps the practice or PCN to identify, against the well-led criteria that the CQC have, what are we doing well? Where could we improve? And then connects you with material that will help you get there. So guides you through that process. It's an empowering tool for people because it brings in voices from across the practice of PCN. So it's not just the leadership team's perspective. You'll have all of the inputs from the wider practice or PCN as well. And it's a really good way of stepping back from what you're doing and thinking, right, if we're going to do well-led well, what do we need to do? There are also primary care specific individual 360s. So if you're a GP partner, practice manager, etc., there's a 360 that you can do, and there's a reflective process for everybody else as well. So it's not just the leadership team who get to do this; it's for everybody. And as I said, there are action plans, how-to guides, etc., that people can use. And I'm pleased to say when people use it, they really like it. It's getting great feedback from people, and really good, as you can see there, helping people develop their clarity around their needs and work better together. It's based upon a platform that's provided out by us to various places within the healthcare system, so UKHSA, Imperial, King's, and also the Red Cross as well. So that's a little bit about the background, and how it works is it's basically a bit like an MOT for your practice or PCN. So you'll set it up, you'll send links to people, they'll respond. It's very quick and easy. It's designed to be unintrusive. Doesn't take very long. People will feedback, and it all gets pulled together centrally, automatically in a report that then you use to think about what you're going to do better, what you can improve, and then upload it to a centralized place to show the CQC that you've been thinking about it. So yeah, think about it as a bit of an MOT for your practice, I suppose. Thanks, Claire.
Sorry, Teams update. I'd lost where the mute button was there for a moment. Thank you, Oscar. So the whole ethos of the well-led practice, I suppose, is that we strongly believe that we all have leadership potential in us because we're all humans. We've gone through life experiences and we can all do it, lead people. Sometimes we just need a little bit of support in terms of tools and resources to help us know where we need to be focusing our development work, where our staff feel we need to be prioritising, and then some things to actually get on and do ourselves. So that is what the Well-Led Practice platform offers you. And based on our experience of working in the leadership setting and based on the data that we've gathered from our practices and PCNs that are using our platform, of which there are about 75 PCNs now, we've been able to draw together what we believe and what you show us from the data that you give to us are the 5 common challenges that you face in general practice in the kind of leadership and CQC well-led zone. So I'll let Oscar start talking you through those.
Yeah, and before we got there, I was interested. If you're on the call, you've got the chat there. What do you think might lie beneath these different numbers? What do you see as some of the most kind of prominent leadership challenges that you come across? So pop a thought in the chat. What do you think might be there?
And as Gary says, please also use the chat to ask us any questions and we'll try and answer them either as we go or at the end. Sarah's typing, this is great, thank you. Just some quick kind of words and phrases.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah,
I think we can all probably guess what you're thinking.
Yeah, so I'll read them out as they come in. Thank you very much, everyone. So Sarah, retention, succession planning, I mean, hugely key, massive challenge, isn't it? Resistance, time, people, budgets, recruitment, staffing. Yeah, central theme coming through there. Yeah, and Helen, great point. It's time. I mean, that's why really the real focus behind us developing this was to try and give something to practices and PCNs that was both, you know, meaningful and useful in helping you develop how well led you are, but also that allowed you to do this in a way that works for you on your schedules and in a way that isn't too oppressive in terms of time. Thank you. Some really interesting ideas. Well, these are 5 that we take out from the data, from what we see as the things that people identify as things that they really struggle with. So yeah, Claire, over to you.
Thank you, Oscar. I think with all of that going on, it's sometimes easy to not find the time to do stuff that is important, but maybe not terribly, terribly, terribly urgent, because all we've got the time to do at the moment is the important and urgent stuff. And this leadership stuff we all recognise is really important, but sometimes we just don't manage to bring it to the top of our to-do list. But hopefully these will give you some insights of how you might be able to do that without spending too much time on it. Number 5 on our countdown is vision and values. You need a vision and you need a set of values because you, as an organisation, you need to know what on earth you're doing and why you're doing it. And when you bring in new people, you can tell them what you're doing. When you decide whether to do something or not, you can refer it back to what you're doing and why. Without a vision and values, you're directionless, I suppose. And the CQC also specifically ask about your vision and values and want them to be embedded in your organisation. They want your staff to be able to say what they are and what they actually mean. But this is often a very difficult thing to do. I was reflecting earlier, this well-led practice organisation that we set up, we've only existed about a year, and it's been hard enough for Oscar and I running it to come up with our vision and values and make sure we're constantly referring back to them and tweaking them if necessary. But for you guys, it must be even harder because you're coming in to a practice as a new practice manager or a partner that's already kind of existed. It's unlikely that, you're very lucky if it's the case, but it's unlikely that you're starting something from scratch. You're picking up something that somebody else has started off. You're not going in there right in the middle. But it's so important to do this piece, not just for the purposes of the CQC. And sadly, you can't just think, oh gosh, okay, 2 weeks until the CQC come, we better have some vision and values. I'm going to write down 3 values that I think probably represent us, and maybe they do, and I'm going to laminate them and I'm going to put them on the wall of every clinical and non-clinical room. I'm going to put it on my email signature, and I'm going to remind everybody that these are our vision and values. So when the CQC come around, just remember it's this, this, and this. It doesn't really work. People will forget them, but people need to be brought along in that journey and co-designing those vision and values with you for them to really stick and for them to feel like they are their own. But it's not that difficult, because in a practice, you've got a group of people who have decided to work at that practice and then have subsequently decided to stay working at that practice. So you're off to a good start. You've already got a bunch of people who must have something in common. And there's no short way of doing it. You've got to design these together. And the best way is to sit down either as a group or with each person individually and say, hey, let me tell you about you. I'm Claire, for example. I'm a partner. I've joined this practice 10 years ago. I started here because of X, Y, and Z. I've carried on here because of this. This is what I really love about the practice. This is what I'm really grateful for the team for. This is where I hopefully see things going in the future, and this is a long-term thing for me, blah, blah, blah. And then invite and encourage people to say the same. Why do they work here? I was once doing a PLT session with some non-clinical staff who raised the issue that they could be working at Asda for the same amount of money that they're getting as their salary at the GP surgery. And I asked them why. It's probably easy for me to ask that because they're not actually my staff. But the things that they came out with were so heartwarming, even though I wasn't their employer. I felt a bit sort of bowled away by it. They talked about how much they loved each other and the team, and they looked out for each other, and they were more than just a workplace team. They were like a family unit. And they talked about some of their patients by name, and some of them that they really cared for. There's some lovely stuff in there. So sometimes you just need to ask. And if you get that out of everybody, what you find is that you've got plenty in common, plenty of values. You could easily pick 3 that you can then say, yeah, these are our values, and everyone will know where they come from and will be able to relate to them. And then they will actually stick and be meaningful and not just a sort of laminated piece of paper in a clinical room. In terms of our specific platform at the Well-Led Practice, well, we ask your staff and we ask you as a leadership team, do you have a set of vision and values? But then we also ask more nuanced questions to tease out whether that's an effective set of vision and values. We ask whether you find your leadership team to be optimistic, can-do, inspiring, and whether there is priorities in place and a clarity around who's doing what. Because if you've got all of that, then you've got a set of vision values that are working. So we don't just ask if you've got one, we ask if you've got one that's actually doing the job it's meant to do. And then we have some exercises on our platform that you can do either as individuals or as a team. Firstly, we've got one simple one about how to set some visions and some goals, but then we have some more tricky ones where you can think about what to prioritize and how to make those difficult decisions about what your vision really is, and making sure you always stick to that. So that's what our platform offers in terms of number 5, the vision and values. Oscar.
Thank you. So number 4, better difficult conversations, or I suppose navigating in some way difficult, tense, conflict-ridden conversations at work. I want to ask you a question, actually, if I can, again in the chat. Is disagreement between people something that you want at work, would you say? Do you want people to disagree? So you can put a yes or a no in the chat. Thank you for everyone. So a stream of people, yeah. And if you can type a little bit more. Why? I can see Debbie, thank you. yes, to grow and learn, respectful disagreement, and it helps with diversity. Thanks, James. Yeah, well, I think that's exactly it. That there can be a tendency to think that disagreeing with each other doesn't lead you down the right road. And Helen, thank you. A hesitant yes, but it kind of depends what you mean. Because some difficult conversations are things that we want to avoid, we walk away from, we don't like it. But there's a reason why we need to have them. And Claire, if you can pop onto the next slide. This is a pyramid from Patrick Lencioni. You may know this if you've read anything about team dynamics. He wrote a book called The 5 Dysfunctions of the Team. And this is his pyramid here, and it's kind of flipped into the positives rather than the negatives. But you need to build from the ground up. Any team will need to build from the ground up. So the most fundamental thing that any team, healthcare or otherwise, needs to have is a sense of trust between people, a sense of inclusion, and a sense of psychological safety. Because the second most important thing that any team needs to do is be able to have constructive disagreement. And the reason that people need to do that is that teams that can't either are in that destructive conflict space, which is not good for everybody, or there's a sense of artificial harmony where things aren't spoken about, but everyone is kind of too afraid to get into things. And the reason that that's such a problem is that teams that aren't talking about the difficult stuff are probably avoiding talking about the stuff that's most important. And this stuff is getting talked about. It just happens on WhatsApp or in the kitchen. It just doesn't happen as a group. And the problem, especially in healthcare, in the examples that I've seen, is that teams that don't do that bury things. So it's absolutely kind of central to good team working that you're able to have good, difficult conversations. And there are ways of doing that. The way we kind of assess this, these are the kind of questions that we ask in our diagnostic. I mean, how well do you listen to each other? Do we actively communicate thanks and support to one another? How well do we deal with challenging behavior and performance, regardless of that person's seniority? The seniority one is an interesting one. You get this idea of hippos, or highest paid person's opinion, which are those voices that dominate the center ground. They direct conversation, they set the agenda, and they don't make space for people. So this is about being able to welcome people in, but also to challenge appropriately. Do you build productive relationships? Do you talk about things if they go wrong? So those are the kind of questions that we ask in order to try and tease this out. And then we have resources on the platform as well to help you work through some of these things if they are a particular challenge to you. So that's something that we see a lot of the time. And as our work as mediators, this is kind of what we do. But for many of these disagreements, you can bring it out yourself. One thing that you might want to try is called the gradients of agreement. So if you're in a team that has difficulty with disagreement, either because you avoid it or because you get too stuck into it, gradients of agreement is simply to ask people on a scale of 1 to 5, where are you on a particular topic? 1 being completely behind, 5 being absolutely against, but also 2, 3, and 4 to give a bit of grey and texture. Because often it can be about I'm completely against or I'm completely for, where this invites a different kind of conversation. That's something that works well with groups. Thank you, Claire. Which leads us into psychological safety. So I don't know whether people are familiar with the term psychological safety. Again, it'd be great in the chat. Is this a phrase that you are familiar with? Say yes if you are, no if you're not. They're not really. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about it. So psychological safety is a term that has been coined by Amy Edmondson, who's a Harvard professor who did a lot of research into healthcare teams. And she said, in her opinion, this sense of psychological safety, which was in that bottom layer of that Lencioni pyramid we saw a moment ago, is the most important thing for a team to have in place. What it is an interpersonal climate where people feel able to express ideas, ask questions, quickly acknowledge mistakes, and raise concerns. So there's a direct link there, I think, with the candor side of things. Are people able to say, this has gone wrong, can you help? Or are people too afraid to do that? And she said it's a bit of a canary in the coal mine for people, that you kind of know if you've got this, and you also kind of know if you don't. But it's the most central thing to be able to do. So what do you do to build that? It's a pretty nebulous idea. Well, what she says is that it's all about focusing on those trusting individual relationships between people, to building that connective tissue between members of your team. There's a nice quote from Brené Brown. I don't know if you have heard of Brené Brown, but she's written a TED talk called The Power of Vulnerability, which is really good, about the relationship between trust, vulnerability, and shame. And she said that trust is the stacking and layering of small moments and reciprocal vulnerability over time. That trust and vulnerability grow together, and if you betray one, you destroy them both. But the research on trust is clear that it's built in those small moments. So the takeaway from her work is that it's not about what you think, it's about what you do. So trust is made real by action, is how she puts it. And she has this lovely example of her daughter's class in the States, in primary school in the States, where the teacher has put a marble jar on the front desk. And every time one of the children experiences something that makes them feel alone or isolated or not part of things, they are allowed to take a marble out of the jar. And every time they experience something that makes them feel positive and together, connected to each other, they are allowed to put a marble in the jar. So the idea is that you can see that kind of rising and falling of trust within the group based upon the marbles that are there in the jar. And so this is all about human connection. So as someone within a practice, it's thinking, can other people tell by my behavior that I have their best interests at heart? Are they with me? Are we on this journey together? Am I communicating that actively to them? So that's the idea with psychological safety.
Thank you, Oscar. An observation I've made from some of my mediation work, this thing about trust and the jar of marbles. It seems so obvious now, the way that Oscar's articulated it, that that's exactly how trust is built and how trust gets eroded. But often when I work with people who are in a conflict, they feel desperate to know exactly what it is that they have done or not done or said that has made the other person not trust them. There's always an issue with trust in the conflicts. And it's very difficult for that person to say, well, it was that one time back in December 2022 when you said this and that. And people can get very offended by that and think that somebody is just trying to play games and maybe not answer questions. But really, it's genuinely not that straightforward. Nobody can remember why half of those marbles went in there and why they got taken out when they did. All you know is what the status of your marble jar is at any one point, whether it's pretty full or pretty empty, and that's about all you can say. So a really interesting thing that often comes up with the mediation work. Anyway, I digress. Number two, so the second most common leadership challenge that we see in practices that use our platform is supportive appraisals. In fact, it's probably appraisals full stop. They go in that very important but not necessarily urgent category that often can get forgotten about. But they are so important, and they are very much something that the CQC expects you to be doing annually with your staff. Of course, you need to do appraisals annually so you can be looking at people's job descriptions and doing very operational HR stuff, like make sure people are performing as they should be, and you can think about bonuses and such. But there's so much more to appraisals than just that. They must be supportive. They're a golden opportunity for you to sit down with your member of staff once a year that you're line managing and just have a chat and get to know them, see where they are in their lives, see where they are in their careers, where they think things are going, spot ways in which you can train them, upskill them, support them with whatever it is that they want to achieve. You'll often find I don't know, a receptionist who actually wants to be an HCA, or somebody who in the future could probably be your next practice manager amongst your ranks. But you've got to sort of ask those questions and support that person to thrive and develop. So in terms of our platform, well, the first thing we have, as Oscar mentioned at the beginning, is that we have individual 360s for everyone in the team, whether that's a clinical person, a non-clinical person, a practice manager, a GP partner. There's a 360 on there for them all to use. And we then benchmark them against those specific groups of people, cohorts of people that exist within our database. So if a partner does one, they will be comparing themselves to the other partners in our database. So that's a really useful tool in itself. But we also deliberately ask your staff and yourselves, if you do a review, whether you feel that the appraisal process is supportive. And then we ask some other questions to really dig into that a bit more. So, for example, do you feel supported to improve your skills? Do you feel things are fair? Do you feel that you're valued? Do you feel things are going well when times are stressful? So we really dig into the how functioning is this supportive appraisal process that you've got in the practice. And again, as well as having the actual appraisal 360 reviews that you can use as a template and a framework for doing a supportive appraisal, we also have some exercises that you can do that are listed on the right hand side there if you want to dive into it. And these are either team exercises or group exercises. Thanks, Oscar. Number one now.
Yeah, number one, this is the thing, I suppose, that is the golden thread through a lot of this that we see, that when things are difficult within a practice, when the things that need to be improved come down to that golden thread of communication that really runs through everything that we talk about. But communication can be really tricky. I think particularly, a few people mentioned time in the chat, like to have the time to be able to have the kind of communication you need can be really tricky. But there are some things that you can do that can really help. One last question for you in the chat, if I can. Do you want consensus in your work? Do you want to reach consensus, do you think? Do you all want to have every meeting where you say, great, we agree? It's a no from Helen there. Yeah, I'd be interested to know a little bit more. It's a bit of a flip side to the disagreement question. Yes, thank you, Helen. An interesting comment. A healthy amount of consensus is needed to gain consistency, but the confidence to disagree. So it's obviously no bad thing if you all agree on a certain topic, but if you find yourself consistently agreeing on a certain thing, every time you agree, everybody you get together to talk, everyone agrees, that's not a great thing, and it's normally indicative of an absence of genuine communication within a group. And we know from the research on this that diversity, both demographic, so where people are from and their backgrounds, but also cognitive, so different, neurodiversity, different approaches, different takes on the world, doesn't only make teams a more enjoyable place to be, but you're going to make better decisions if you have the ability to speak up and say to each other, I don't quite agree. And one of the things that I really notice when I work with clinical groups, almost the thing I keep an eye out most for, is how well are this group listening to their least senior, normally non-medical voice, because it can tell you so much about things. Are there lots of hippos? Are people pushing each other around and dominating the center ground, or are they keeping their ear out for what they're not hearing? So the key to communication here is about making sure that people can talk and be heard without interruption or being leaned on to stop. you'll want to watch that the same voices don't dominate, and that you are encouraging, in a way that people want to communicate, those quieter voices to be heard. So really, it's about helping some people hold back, gently hold back, and helping others gently contribute more. And having some non-negotiables here, that you don't want to just set these down. This needs to be agreed, but the non-negotiables around civility, constructive communication, respect for one another, these things can be eroded gradually to such an extent that people then are just rude to each other, and that's just normal. So it's about saying to each other, we all work here. How do we want to do this? What do we want to expect of one another? And the key message with this kind of communication across the whole practice is about designing it with the people that you're in the practice with. It's not just about your opinion. It's saying to everybody you work with, what do you want this to look like? How do we do this well? And so some of the questions that you can ask, which can be really useful, are really quite simple. So to say to people, when we communicate with each other, what makes your life difficult? What do we do that doesn't work for you? What does work for you? Do we do enough of it? And a really helpful question, what single change would most benefit you, do you think? And it's getting all of that into the open. And another question that I like when I facilitate is to say, if we're doing this differently in 6 months' time, we look back in 6 months' time on this moment and we think, I'm so pleased we've got from there to here. What's different? And as a leader, as I imagine many of you are kind of senior people in your practice, communicating to the other people who work there that this is important to you can be an enormously useful thing to do. So that, I think, that's our number one. And you can see on the screen there some of the questions that the diagnostic will help you with if you would like to use it. So there are our top 5. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming with us on this journey. So starting with visions and values, better difficult conversations, psychological safety, supportive appraisals, and improving practice-wide communication. Oh, Claire, you're muted.
I almost want to redraw that slide with a sort of string through all of them, like they're beads, and the string is this communication thing that Oscar just talked to so well, that it is common throughout it all. Thank you, Oscar. We always get asked briefly a little bit about our platform. Remember, you can download these slides at the end, and this information is all on our website, so I won't go into it in too much detail. But if you would like to use our platform at your practice, it's based on the number of patients you have in your list, and then you get an annual access, which gives you unlimited use of as many reviews and diagnostics and 360s as you want, and dipping in and out of our expert guidance and exercises. And we also have some CQC planning documents, so you can start to populate a bit of an action plan and then reflect on how you're doing, so that you can genuinely work on your well-led and then demonstrate that you've done so. We have a special price for PCNs who just wish to use it on their own for their PCN team alone. So for the clinical directors, the PCN managers and the RS staff, without giving it to the network practices as well. And for those practices that feel they need a bit of extra support, we offer some facilitation and some sessions alongside the work that you do yourselves on the platform to make sure you're really getting the most out of it and embedding your changes. And that's normally delivered by the 4 people on the screen that you can see now. Let's hear some questions from people. I don't know, Gary, have you been noticing if any have been coming in as we go along? But this is the time to hear.
Yeah, nothing's added to the chat, but it'd be great to take some questions, certainly. It's while people are thinking about questions to put in the chat, I mean, my perspective on this, CQC and the well-led domain is tough. 13 years in practice, and I always found it tough. And I was at a practice that we would have absolutely felt was a well-led practice in our eyes. Retention and recruitment was great, and that was one of the challenges that we were talking about. Financially, it was good. Morale was good. It was innovative. But when it came to CQC, they thought we required improvement. So having a platform that's actually going to be directing you and pushing you and helping you get all the evidence together and giving you the tools to develop, that well-led. For me, it would have been invaluable when I was in practice. I left at 21, didn't have that opportunity. And the other side of it was just the time it takes. And if you're going through CQC, you'll probably know the time it takes to get all the evidence together. If you leave it till when you're due your inspection, it's often too late, or the time to do something has passed. So again, this will prompt you to do it as you go along this plan. So that's, perspective from sort of my 13 years in practice. We haven't got any questions yet. Nothing's come in, has it?
No, not yet. Ketan, did you have any thoughts based on your experience of working in partnership, PCN, federation, locality? You've done just about every kind of role going in general practice.
Well, I was looking back. I know we don't have any questions right now, but I was looking back at things that the people that have joined us today thought was important, and communication sticks out. And by very nature that you've come on this is because you're interested in perhaps being better led or see what else you can do. So communication, I think everybody agrees that communication is really important. But then what stops you would be my question. And how do you know you're doing it well anyway? And what stops you, some of the answers were time, and time your most precious commodity. And how do you know you're doing it very well anyway? So Gary mentioned before, you can think you're communicating well, but how do you know? And having that constant culture of feedback is really important. And you can have some great ideas and put them into practice. It's an onerous process to do it by yourself. So really what well led is all about is trying to make best use of your time. You've already decided that this is important. So how can you make the best use of your time? And that is by getting that feedback and then going to do something about it, and then getting that feedback again and keeping that as a continuous process. And I think that's the most important thing. And then you will find out if you really are communicating well.
Leadership is a continuous process, no doubt about it, isn't it? You can't sit still at any point. You can't, in the run up to the CQC, spend a couple of months getting it all sorted and then relax about it for the next few years. It doesn't work like that.
Claire, Helen Brazil's added a question for the chat. Maybe this is one for Oscar or yourself. Creating a less hippo-heavy board meeting, and I love that, hippo, and a more diverse space to hear the voices of others on the wider team. How can you influence that diversity in meetings? Is that one for you, Oscar, or Claire?
I think that's one for Oscar, yes.
I'm really happy to grab that. Thank you, Helen, for that question. It's tricky, isn't it, if you've got a culture within a team that has developed within a certain way where certain people talk and other people don't. You often see this idea of transactional analysis, and I'm not sure whether that means something to you, but effectively parent-child dynamics, where some people step into the centre ground, dominate, make decisions, and other people sit back, become more reactive, passive maybe. How do you try and move that on? And it's a question that I work with a lot when I work with teams. Is a central question. Really, the way you do this, I think, is trying to promote insight within those hippo members in the first instance around the idea that they may be taking up too much space in the room, or do they think we could get more by inviting other voices into the room? But really, it's about trying to nudge people into thinking, do you know what, maybe I do a lot of the talking. Maybe it would be a good thing to step back slightly. And the way that I do that when I facilitate is to engage the whole team in a conversation on how they would like to do things. So you can use uninterrupted time as a technique. So you can have a group of 6 people, you give everybody 5 minutes each to give their view on something. So there's an immediate equality of voices in the room. So structure can be quite useful. But really, if you're the leader of this team, Helen, taking people aside over a cup of coffee and just raising it gently as an idea of making space. And for those who don't talk as much, gently inquiring with them, could they do more? Could they say more? What might help them engage more? And so it's not forcing people to do things differently, but it's nudging and gently moving people away. Helen, I don't know if that's useful to hear that, but it's a very common question that I see in Teams.
And I think when we were at best practice, we did ask the room if some people identified perhaps as hippos, but didn't realise they were hippos until they'd heard us talk about what hippos were. And there were quite a few hands that went up. So hippos are, you're able to work with hippos. We have a more formal exercise on our platform if you want to get stuck into the hippo business a bit more, where you can observe a meeting and note down the length of time that people are speaking for and what kind of a contribution they're making to the meeting, so that you can, if necessary, have some solid sort of evidence that a hippo is a hippo, if that helps with the conversation with the hippo.
That's such a useful thing to do, to have observers. Yeah, and I think what you can do, Helen, is to start with broad principles. Is to ask people, you know, what do we want when we talk together? What do we want to see happening? How would we like our group here to do this? What does that look like? And so you can kind of nudge outliers, either in the people who don't speak very much or people who speak loads, into a place. Because if one of the principles you want is a balance of voices, then when that doesn't happen, you can use one of your observers that you've nominated to say, I see that maybe isn't happening right now. Yeah, but you get the idea. Yes, thank you, Helen, for your second comment as well. If we have no more comments, I would perhaps ask a question of you, which is slightly different, which is covered quite a lot of material today. I wonder, is there a single thought prompt that has resonated with you? If it has, if there's a thought that has resonated with you, perhaps pop it in the chat and see what's stayed with you.
Whilst people are doing that, Oscar, it's probably worth saying as well, I mean, this has touched on what the well-led platform, you know, does and how it can sort of help practice. If anybody wants to explore a little bit more, you know, get in touch with us, and, you know, we can arrange a demo, and there's free trials and things, but because, you know, there's much more to it, and we'd happily sort of spend some time and help you with that as well.
Thank you, Gary. So the screen that you've now got in front of you is a QR code, or you can click on the link when you get the slide deck, and it gives you the opportunity to sample our platform super quickly without having to tell us you're doing so and give us any of your details. You do a quick assessment of where you think your leadership is, and it will give you a free exercise to go off and do based on how you've scored. It even gives you a score so you can be competitive and all have a go at it and see who self-assesses as the best leader in the room. Psychological safety from Helen.
Yeah, the free leadership self-assessment, if I put myself back in practice, you could have some great fun with this, getting everybody in the team to do that. And you'll all get a score, and you possibly all going to get pointed to a different exercise. Be a great fun. It'll really show you what the platform does.